for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here in Brussels. It's my first foreign conference, so it's great to be at the physical presence after such a long time. I love art, and I realized I love any type of art, but I realized I'm not good at it. So I decided to train as a social scientist. And I became a regulator, the European regulator, for some years. So I worked on the new policies to govern various phenomena. Then I decided maybe it's more important to look into the technology. And I'm now with a group of people in Prague, GoodAI, which are developing new algorithms. And I'm trying to add my little bit to that human beneficial AI. So I'm trying to a little bit add to this discussion and to outline what we could do actually. So please bear with my boring slides. I don't have too many. I don't have 50 slides. I have just 5, I think. And let me talk a little bit about where are we today with the algorithms. What is the impact on individuals and humanity? What we might do about that impact. And I would like to finish with very last thing and very profound thing, which is values. We haven't talked too much about values. So whose values are actually being embedded in the algorithms? Okay, let me see. Okay, so algorithms today. You have heard about GPT-3 quite a number of times today. It's a transformer, and this is a technology which is now being used widely for a number of applications, which used to be sorted out or solved by different types of machine learning before. Transformers, you can imagine, these are kind of algorithms which are able to handle huge amounts of data. But we're talking about huge, much bigger than we used to talk about when machine learning was coming. And they are able as well to deal with a huge amounts of outputs. So for example, the language model, which is, I believe, the largest interpret at the moment, which is the Chinese model, has almost 2 trillion of parameters in it. So even if we do all these visualizations, we cannot visualize this, and we cannot handle this as humans at all. So these types of transformers now are moving to different types of application areas. You might have heard about protein folding. There's been an important development in that field. But as well, they are going to help us to code. So they are co-writing the code or even writing on their own the code, programming the code. At the same time as we move with the research to new applications and we are becoming more and more accurate with the transformers, we deploy the technology in many other areas, in much more high-stake areas. So for example, we balance energy supply and demand in the UK now with the algorithm. So we automate it. It's not the humans who decide, but it's basically the algorithms who decide. We automate recommendation of drugs. AI can help us better identify which drug would be more potent for an individual in terms of cancer. As well, we start using much more robots. We haven't talked too much about this physical connection between AI and robots, but these new algorithms allow us that the robots see and are able to grasp items, basically as humans are. So we use robots enabled or empowered by the AI, by current machine learning, to assemble, for example, groceries and send it to the supermarkets. So these are the algorithms today. What are the impacts on humanity? One have talked about some, Bruce has talked about some. Honestly, I wanted to put on this slide, we don't know. I just put, we know very little. We have very little idea what is actually impact of all this. But there are some important impacts which we can see at the moment, or kind of signals which we can see, and we should consider these signals much more seriously, which I will talk about on the next slide. So we can see 2 types of impacts which are very much interlinked. This is not kind of like a profound separation. So one is the erosion of human agency, and the second is erosion of privacy. And of course, they are very much, as I said, very much interconnected. So just a few examples. On erosion of human agency, we are witnessing something which could be called hyper-nudging. So the algorithms are kind of like treating us in a way to push us to certain decisions. It might be good for us sometimes, so we might get a good movie or a good book recommendation. Often it might not be that good, but we don't know what's really happening. So we're being nudged to certain decisions, being both in terms of as consumers, but as well as in terms of political actors, so being as well as citizens and voters. Addiction, I'm very much worried about mental health, especially of the children. So addiction is, again, important thing which we see it might be happening, and the algorithms are actually contributing to it, at least in certain settings. I just noticed, and this is my ignorance, that, for example, Instagram is maximizing teenage time spent as an important key performance indicator. So we should be worried about addiction, and we should understand much better what goes on in terms of addiction. Social manipulation. Of course, you heard about deep fakes and deep reads. And deep reads we will be seeing probably much more with GPT-3 and similar types of transformers which are able to do natural language, so they're able to produce messages. But as well, maybe even more important for me is this deskilling. Sorry, I see I have different slides. Yeah. So even more important is the deskilling, what I would call deskilling. And what I'm talking about here is that as we rely on the machines more and more, and satellite navigation is a clear example, we're losing certain skill. And one of the skills which I consider to be critical is the critical assessment of information. So if we outsource the critical assessment of information on machines and we start losing that skill, to me this is really worrying development. Erosion of privacy, a lot has been talked about surveillance capitalism, but it's not only surveillance capitalism, it's a surveillance state, and we have to be very much aware of it. And this is just an example that one of the African countries is launching a whole surveillance smart city, thanks to Chinese technology from Huawei. But of course, even agencies in the global north, in developed countries, are using AI to help, for example, to do facial recognition or to support decision making of judges. So there, different types of biases might come in, and this is a huge field. I don't want to be touching on it, but maybe we will touch on it in terms of in the panel. But what is important here, real harm might happen. If it does not function properly, of course, like innocent people are being harmed. Okay. Sorry. So first, I would like to talk about what to do with it. There is some kind of technology fix. Again, we haven't talked about it much today, that there is technology which could be used in order to fight the problem, actually. And as we don't address the cybersecurity with paper and pencil, similarly, we should not be kind of like shying away from using technology in order to help us. And here I see two major or three major approaches. So privacy by design. So try to really make sure that whatever is designed as an AI system is actually designed in terms of privacy, and the privacy is just deeply embedded in the whole system, in everything, starting from the data set assembly to training, but of course, most importantly, to the use phase. Second is, we should be thinking if we could develop something what I call here a personal guard, AI personal guard even. So something which could help you to actually navigate that space, to help you to alert you, for example, when you are being in the danger of getting addicted to something, or alert you when you are being manipulated not in line with your best interests. So to show you that this might not be leading you the right way, this recommendation system, for example. And as well to help you in general, just to make the decisions in terms of your own needs, which you need to, of course, somehow specify and to teach your personal guard to know it. Importantly, and already Bruce talked about that, we will need a new regulation. We must be sure, and I will touch on it as well on the next slide. But first, we must be sure, like for example, that this regulation does not hinder the development of these technical solutions, so it does not go against the technical solutions. But much more important than the technical fix, I think, is asking the right questions. And I will go much deeper into this now. So there's a number of people which say they work on the AI ethics and AI safety. But there's much smaller number of real researchers actually working in the powerhouses on that. People say there are just a few dozens. So if you think this is really a really small number globally. So we need to really improve what we consider to be AI safety research, and here are several proposals how to deal with that. So first is transparency. Vladan talked a lot about that. We need just a different approach to transparency. But what is really important, we cannot just go bluntly about transparency because it's not really simple. And we could do lots of harm. But what I believe, we really need transparency about what you call objective functions. So what the system is actually optimizing for. So this would be for me the first thing. To know, for example, what Facebook is optimizing for my newsstream, or whatever other technology I'm using, every minute is actually being optimized for. So transparency is really important area, and we should really support that. Second, we should create incentives for the companies to test their systems and to try to do something what I would call ethical impact assessment. So ethical impact assessment is what we don't know. As I said, we don't know much. We don't know really the impacts. And we need to create new approaches to ethical impact assessment. And one might be the open impact assessment platform, which I'm now working on actually. The platform should allow mostly social scientists to pose the hypothesis, what is the impact of the AI system? And then to crowdsource the data, which would help us to understand. And as well as important plug-in, which would be the involvement of the citizens. We need somehow to make sure, like we hear from the citizens, what are their concerns, and then we develop the hypothesis and then we test it. Because, why to do this? Because it's really difficult actually to assign the causality between some AI system and the effect. Sometimes it seems rather simple, like for example, Instagram and addiction on Instagram because it's optimizing basically on your time spent on the Instagram. So this might be simple. But in terms of wider and deeper impacts, we just don't know. So we need to understand much better what is the connection between the AI system and the impact which we observe. And as complexity was mentioned here, complexity is huge. It's not so much the complexity of the algorithms and the data, but it's the complexity of the real world, which is captured by the algorithms. So because of the high complexity, we need basically a new approach how to test the hypothesis about the impact. And we need to develop this very fast because the technology is moving fast. So if we wait a few decades as kind of like a normal in research, it will take us by surprise too much. Talking about the regulation, there is a really big danger which I sense here. And I'm in Brussels here, so I dare to say, even here in Brussels, we need to really strike the right balance. If we undershoot, this means, for example, we do not create the right incentives for the companies to do the research and to do the impact assessment, not only before they deploy, but after the system is deployed. This is the most important, after the system is being deployed and is being used by millions at the end. If we do not create right rules for transparency, if we do not create the right way how to involve citizens, and the public consultation we run in the European institutions is not sufficient. So we need a new way. We need a new way of crowdsourcing the concerns. If we don't do this, we undershoot and we will be taken by surprise and we will face the negative impacts very soon. But there's the other problem. We might overshoot. And this might happen very, very easily. We might do that, we overregulate And what will happen if we overregulate in this part of the world is that we displace the research to the other parts of the world. So we will displace it to the US, we will displace it to China. And we will even, now we are lagging behind in research and in deployment, but we will even, slow down more. So the gap will not be, we will not be closing the gap, we will be increasing the gap. So let me finish with a few thoughts about the values, because we haven't talked too much about them. So whose values are being now embedded in the systems? It's really interesting to hear that among the commercial actors, it is DeepMind, which is Google, basically, and Microsoft, which are the most important in terms of actually making sure, or not making sure, but influencing in terms of the public interest. There is as well OpenAI, but OpenAI is now connected to Microsoft, so you're basically getting just two companies, Google and Microsoft. What is happening, and I think Bruce was mentioning it as well, we're getting a huge de-democratization of the development of AI in terms of research especially. It's not happening, kind of like only in the universities. It's actually happening between, in the big tech, together with top universities. So the professors, the top shots in AI research is somehow co-working with the big tech. And again, this has not been mentioned here today, but transformers, they need lots of compute. It's really expensive to actually run a big transformer, so this state-of-the-art algorithms. So it's very difficult for a number of entities actually, including a number of researchers from smaller companies or other universities than the big tier, than the top tier, to reach to the computing power you actually need to do the research. So there's been a group of researchers who are trying to open the algorithms, and the argument is quite clear, because as it is currently, the business entities basically don't have the interest to address the risks. They downplay the risks, and they don't have the interest to sort it apart from kind of like a clear-cut, again, connections to the risk. So maybe they will have interest to make sure, people are not getting addicted if we manage to call that out enough and early enough. But to these wider implications, especially in terms of society, there is not much of the interest, actually, to address these concerns. So it really makes, it's really important to open the understanding of the algorithms and to make it transparent in such a way that we can run different impact assessment. Well, and finally, according to the last figures in 2021, China is being overtaking not only Europe, but the United States as well. So it's important to understand where the balance is actually shifting, and to think about what we can contribute as Europeans to striking the right balance in terms of defining the interest, defining the approach to understanding the impacts, and making sure we create the right incentives different actors actually act upon them. Thank you.